We may only have to wait a few more days until we find out more about what's coming next in the Resident Evil franchise. With Capcom just recently announcing their own Capcom Showcase on June 12th, 2023 at 3 p.m. PST, many are thinking we may hear more about Resident Evil. More importantly, what future projects may be in the works. In the most recent video I made about Resident Evil, we discussed that Capcom was sending out surveys to fans, asking us what we'd like to see in future remakes of the Resident Evil series. You can check out that video I did linked in the description. But while this upcoming Capcom showcase may not contain information about a future remake, I do have a feeling we will be hearing more about Resident Evil in the presentation. With Resident Evil 4 Remake achieving platinum status for Capcom, and with the game having sold over 4 million units, there's clearly demand for Capcom's most successful franchise, and I bet we will be learning more about the upcoming Separate Ways DLC headed for the game. Fingers crossed. With Summer Game Fest happening, Microsoft doing their showcase, Square Enix doing their Final Fantasy XVI pre-launch party, and many more. By the way, enter the link in the description for a chance to be one of 2 winners to earn a free copy of Final Fantasy XVI for this month's giveaway. Capcom may be doing their part in just being part of the crowd to continue promoting their juggernaut success in Street Fighter VI and Monster Hunter. But maybe, just maybe, we may be getting a little bit more to work with regarding new Resident Evil content in addition to a, fingers crossed, official announcement of Ada's Separate Ways DLC coming to Resident Evil 4 Remake. Because a leak of Resident Evil 4 Remake's game files pinpointed the existence of Separate Ways in the remake, I thought we could go ahead and look back at the massive Capcom data breach in 2020 to potentially inform us of new games that may be coming down the pipeline. Because these leaks are about 3.5 years old at this point, what I am about to share with you may never come to fruition, but seeing as many of the leaked projects in that data breach have come true, I thought now would be as good a time as ever to jump back into the speculation. These leaks are nearly 4 years old, with this being public knowledge ever since the leaks occurred in November of 2020, so take this with a heaping grain of salt. With many sources close to Capcom telling popular games media outlets like IGN, GameSpot, and Game Informer that many of these leaks are genuine, there may be some truth to the leaks here. Here is a list of all the Resident Evil games that were leaked in the 2020 Capcom leaks, listed in order in which they were projected to release. 1. Resident Evil Outrage, Q4 of fiscal year 21. 2. Resident Evil 4 Remake, Q4 of fiscal year 2022. 3. Biohazard Apocalypse, Q3 of fiscal year 2023. And 4. Resident Evil HUNK, Q4 of fiscal year 2024. Regarding Resident Evil HUNK, in Japanese, the Resident Evil character we know as HUNK in English is pronounced HUNK, which the name in this leaked Resident Evil title refers to. While you may be thinking that Resident Evil 4 Remake is the only game that we have seen revealed so far from this list, some games outside of the Resident Evil franchise have actually come true, including Street Fighter VI and Dragon's Dogma 2. Again, take this with a heaping grain of salt, to the point where you can't physically contain all that salt in the palm of the hand you got, because we are about to jump into the information we know regarding the Resident Evil titles in the leaks. Starting with Resident Evil Outrage. Well, safe to say, this ship very well may have already sailed. Outrage was slated to come out in Q4 of 2021, and with updated information pertaining to the game early in 2021 by Resident Evil leaker Dusk Golem on Twitter, the title has since faded into obscurity. On your screen is what Dusk Golem had to say about Resident Evil Outrage in February of 2021. Originally rumored to be another multiplayer Resident Evil title, Outrage was instead later assumed to be a codename for the third Resident Evil Revelations game, starring Rebecca Chambers. The title was rumored to be a Switch exclusive for a few months before releasing on other platforms. Since then, Resident Evil Village released later that year in May, and we even got more content in Village in late 2022 with the Winter's DLC, all with absolute radio silence regarding Resident Evil Outrage. Due to the inactivity of this leak, the consensus is that this game was cancelled or is set aside to be completed at a later date. As for me, if this game becomes a thing later down the road, I hope it is not another Resident Evil multiplayer title, and instead is a single-player RE game. I like the idea of another Revelations title as I loved the first two, but let me know your thoughts in the comments about what you think happened to Resident Evil Outrage. Next, we had Resident Evil 4 Remake that was said to come out in Q4 of 2022, and while RE4 Remake did not release in 2022, it did arrive in March of 2023 and kicked some major ass. With the game's files revealing separate ways, we'll just have to see when Capcom officially reveals this long-awaited DLC for Ada Wong. Fingers crossed we hear more about it during Capcom's showcase on June 12th. Perhaps the only other Resident Evil game that I think could be announced, although I very much believe it won't, would be Resident Evil 9. This game has been rumored to be called Resident Evil Apocalypse, or Biohazard Apocalypse, which coincides with the leak. Although the game, according to the leak, was projected to release in Q3 of this year, I wouldn't expect this until either later next year or even 2025. The leaks for Resident Evil Apocalypse have been well documented and center heavily around a 4chan post. Heaping grain of salt. With the plot set in a ghost town in the West, according to the leak, players would be able to explore rivers, forests, caves, and more, all while contending with deformed creatures that are able to mimic human voices. This game is leaked to also serve as the final entry in the Winter's trilogy, and would be the 9th mainline entry in the franchise. Many Resident Evil fans hypothesize that the game's logo will feature the 9th phase of the moon, with the moon serving as an important component to the story of the game. Out of all the leaks, Resident Evil 9, Resident Evil Apocalypse, or however you want to call it, is certainly gaining considerable attention now that Resident Evil 4 Remake has been released. With this game likely to be the next Resident Evil to come out, we'll just have to wait and see if this game's announcement will come in the upcoming Capcom showcase. But I want to know from you, what have you heard about regarding the Resident Evil 9 leaks, and are you interested in another chapter of the Winter's story arc? Moving on to the final game, and the game that I am most curious about, Resident Evil HUNK. Originally leaked to be releasing in Q4 of 2024, this game would, unsurprisingly, be about HUNK. Now, if you don't know about HUNK, go ahead and watch this video here detailing the history of why HUNK is such a force to be reckoned with, linked in the card here and in the description. This we know literally nothing about, with no further leaks discussing the game's plot, setting, etc. So this, like Resident Evil Outrage, is really up in the air. Due to HUNK's popularity as a mysterious yet badass figure in the series through Resident Evil 2's The Fourth Survivor mode, and appearances in Mercenaries and Raid modes throughout the series, a game featuring the Grim Reaper himself would be legendary. Let me know what you all think about it in the comments below. While many of these games may not come to fruition, we all know Resident Evil 9 is inevitable, and whether or not it will follow the description as laid down by the 4chan post, the game will most likely be the next main Resident Evil title we are all going to be talking about. Although I doubt it, let's hope we hear more about it during Capcom's showcase, if not certainly the Separate Ways DLC for Resident Evil 4 Remake. Watch this video about HUNK if you'd like to catch up on some fascinating lore surrounding Resident Evil's most well-equipped zombie slayer. And again, if you are interested in winning a free game, check out my giveaway of Final Fantasy XVI, where you could be one of 2 winners getting the game for free, paid for by yours truly. The info is in the description at your convenience. Thank you all for the support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Peace!